Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the first video in my series of Lorwyn Eclipsed Commander deck techs. I'm releasing a new Lorwyn Commander deck every Thursday through mid-March when the Ninja Turtle set drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. So if you have a request for a specific commander from Lorwyn you'd like to see me build, or a way you want to see me build them, let me know in the comments below. As you see, our commander for the day is Doran, Besieged by Time, an enormous black poplar tree folk. In the original Lorwyn block, Doran accumulated a vast quantity of magical knowledge, including obscure shamanic secrets, as he wandered the plane. He was able to turn his natural toughness to his advantage, and to share that power with his allies. But we can't know how much of that remains true. Shadowmoor has twisted Doran, leaving him voiceless and cursed to wander the darkness, alone with his intellect and wisdom. His ancient form is frightening enough to ward off any who might encounter him, and his fears that recrossing the boundary into light might rob him of his memories leave him trapped in his solitude. A sad fate for a beloved character, but perhaps it isn't the end for him. Anyway, I'm excited to share with you what I put together for Doran, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander most of all. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I put it at the head of my deck. So whatever it asks of me, I put 30 cards toward doing that. That's our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers just to clear the board when it's needed, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none. But I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands, so I can make sure I can hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play the game. So let's talk about our commander. Doran, Besieged by Time is a 0/5 legendary treefolk druid for 1 and Abzan mana, a white, a black, and a green. Doran says each creature spell we cast with toughness greater than its power costs 1 less to cast, and whenever a creature we control attacks or blocks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the difference between its power and toughness. So I have to start here by explaining some very silly Magic the Gathering slang. When you have a creature with a high toughness, especially in conjunction with a lower power, you say that that creature has a big butt, because, of course, Magic players are classy. Doran's first appearance in the original Lorwyn set was, I believe, the first time we ever got a card that allowed creatures to do combat damage based on their toughness rather than their power. This ability has seen occasional reprinting since then, but it always gets related back to Doran, since he was the first. He helped codify the idea that treefolk are strong because they're tough. But as I explained in my intro, Doran isn't what he once was, and he can't empower his fellow treefolk the way he once did. What he can do is enable us to play them, as well as everything else with enough badonkadonk to make a difference. And when we take advantage of the discount he offers, he rewards us for it by giving our bottom-heavy buddies a boost to both of their combat stats. So we're almost all in on creatures which have more toughness than power, and at least 1 generic mana in their mana cost, casting cost that is. We have more than 30 creatures that Doran can discount this way, meaning even when our commander isn't on the field, we're not too worried about being able to block because we've got toughness for days. But when Doran is on board, he triggers on blocks too, making our defenses all the better. Of course, we're not a defender's deck. In fact, I cut several cards that would have been great if that were our theme. No, only 2 of our cards are defenders, and both of those still have ways of damaging our opponents, because the real theme of this deck is a tribute to the original Doran, strength from sturdiness. We have a suite of cards that pump up our team with counters and anthems to grow our sprouts as we reach for the sun. Then we swing in, limbs flailing, to sap away our opponent's life totals until they're ready to leave. And it doesn't end there. We have cards that give us further rewards for caring about toughness over power, cards to keep our trees safe from our enemies' slash and burn tactics, and cards that help us replant when wildfire season passes. We even have cards that bring back the combat damage from toughness effect, including original Doran himself, to prove that no matter how verdant our new Doran grows, he never forgets his roots. I had a lot of fun building this deck. What can I say? I like big trees, and I cannot lie. I think fewer brewers would deny when you see a card with a trigger on attacks and blocks and a discount on creature costs, you sleeve it up. I know you think that it's all that because you see it's got O5 stats. It makes you think about a bridge for ensnaring. You say, I'm sold. I can't stop staring. I think, Doran, I want to ramp into ya. Make you a 3-drop. Booyah. My pod, they tried to warn me. They said a big butts deck. Come on, you know that's corny. But nah, I have to show respect. He wants to get into my deck. I know Shadowmoor hasn't been kind, but he don't belong in the 99. With him, my board's advancing, improving, and enhancing. My opponents are full of regret, acting foolish like they're from an unset. I'm tired of preview season saying that Morkant is the thing. Ask an Abzan player for their benchmark. It's gotta have much bark. So players, do we listen to the naysayers? Just shuffle up, fan them out. Even red players got to shout. Baby got bark. You'll enjoy this deck if you like employing a combat plan that's an unusual twist on the norm, or if you like showing your opponents that your below-the-waist strength is more than enough to make their plans go pear-shaped. So as usual, this Morkant, good grief. This Moxfield list that we are going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of that list, you will see a considering section full of cards that I considered putting in the deck and ultimately decided not to. But if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you've got a different focus you want to go for, or if you just want to try a different angle, you could check that considering section to get some ideas when you build your own Doran Besieged by Time deck. So we're going to start with the biggest part of our game plan. It's our big butts. We've got a whole bunch of cards in here that give us a creature or make for us a creature that has a higher toughness than its power. So we're going to start with a new Lorwyn Eclipsed card called Great Forest Druid. This is simple. It's a 1 and a green for an 0/4 Treefolk Druid that taps to add 1 mana of any color. I love a mana dork for 1 and a green that makes mana of any color. That's great. And the fact that it's a Treefolk as well as a Druid, just like Doran, that's pretty great. And look at that bud. Also, I'm going to use this as an example of how Doran's ability works. When Great Forest Druid attacks or blocks with Doran in play, it will become a 4/8, because the difference between its power and toughness is 4, obviously. So if it were a 2/4, it would become a 4/6, because it would get +2/+2, since the difference between 2 and 4 is 2. You get it. Next is Leafkin Druid. This is another 1 and a green mana dork. It's an elemental druid that's an 0/3, and it taps to add green, but if we have 4 or more creatures, which we're running 36 creatures, including our commander, so we will, you can tap it to add double green instead. That's pretty good. Next is Nyx Fleece Ram. This is a non-mana dork 2-drop for us. 1 and a white for a 0/5 enchantment creature sheep that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you gain a life. So gaining a life is not really a theme in our deck, but it was hard to turn away a 2-drop that's an 0/5, because with Doran it becomes a 5/10, and if we are able to get one of our effects in play that makes it do damage equal to its toughness, or based on its toughness rather than its power, then it's essentially a 2-mana 10/10. Seems pretty good. Overgrown Zealot is next. 1 and a green for an 0/4 Elf Druid that taps to add 1 mana of any color, and if that were the end of it, it would be the same as the Great Forest Druid, except for its Treefolk Druid versus Elf Druid type lines. It does have another line of text that we do not care about in this deck. It's just the only other 0/4 add 1 mana of any color for 1 and a green that I could find in Magic. So don't worry about turning permanents face up. We're not doing that here. It's just meant to be another Great Forest Druid for us. Next we have Catapult Fodder from Crimson Vow. This is 2 and a black for a 1/5 zombie. So again, with Doran in play, this will become a 5/9, since it's a difference of 4, so it gets +4/+4. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures that each have toughness greater than their power, transform this creature, which flips it over into the Catapult Captain, which is a 2/6. So of course when it attacks, it's going to become a 6/10. It has the ability for 2 and a black, and tap and sack another creature. Target opponent loses life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. What's great about this is it does not mean the printed toughness. It means whatever their toughness currently is. So if, for example, we've just attacked with our Great Forest Druid and it's a 4/8, we can then use the Catapult Captain to sacrifice Great Forest Druid and have target opponent lose 8 life, because that's its current toughness, assuming it doesn't have any other pump effects on it, like counters. So yeah, Catapult Fodder is very nice in this deck. Next, we have original Doran, Doran the Siege Tower. A white, a black, and a green for an 0/5 legendary treefolk shaman that causes each of our creatures, or each creature assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. This is not just us. This is symmetrical. So this can really mess up our opponent's boards as well. But it also means that we might be in a situation where their creatures are a little tougher than we expected them to be. Probably they didn't build toward that though, so we're probably still going to have a pretty good advantage on them, considering this is a 3-mana 5/5 with that in play. It's also kind of annoying enough to players that cared about their power that they might want to snipe Doran, the original Doran, the Siege Tower. And if they do, then that means he just ate a removal spell that our commander didn't, or one of our other creatures that we care about more didn't. So being removal bait is also pretty good for Doran. Next is Glunch the Bestower from Baldur's Gate. Love this card. It's a flumph. Glunch is an 0/5 legendary jellyfish for 1, a green and a white that flies, and says at the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They put 2 1/1 counters on a creature they control, then choose a second player to draw a card and a third player to create 2 treasure tokens. So this is a group hug commander, or group hug card if you want to think of it that way. So Glunch lets us choose a player. It can be us. So we can use Glunch to pump up one of our creatures, to draw a card, or to make treasures, whatever we may need, and we can use them also to make friends at the table. So we make deals with our opponents. We get to give them the things that they most want. Maybe they leave us alone, maybe they give us a little kickback for it, maybe they don't target us with something, or maybe when they were to target us with something, we can tell them, look, don't target me or my creatures, and I'll give you this card draw from Glunch at my end step, and that might be worth it to them. It can be really fun to play this politically, but also it gives us a benefit every end step, so yeah, every one of our end steps, that is. Next is Sinister Gnarl Bark, also from the Lorwyn Eclipsed set, but their commander product. This is 2 and a black for an 0/4 Treefolk Wizard that says at the beginning of your end step, draw a card and blight 1. Blight 1 means we put a -1/-1 counter on one of our creatures. So even if we only put it on the Gnarl Bark itself, that's okay. Because it'll become a -1/3, because power can go negative, which means Doran will still give it a bonus to both its power and toughness equal to 4. So even though right now it would become a 4/8 with a -1/-1 counter on it, it's a -1/3, so it's still a difference of 4, so it becomes a 3/7 with Doran. And we can keep doing that until it kills itself, or we can start moving it to something else. But Doran's ability to pump it up keeps helping it even when its power is in the negatives. Pretty great. Plus, other than that, it's like a Phyrexian Arena. It's just a -1/-1 counter instead of costing us life, and we're getting extra cards every turn, albeit at the end step. So yeah. Next up is Tend the Springs from the Lorwyn main set. 2 and a green for a sorcery that says search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. This is Rampant Growth. So what do we get for the extra generic mana? Then if you control 7 or more lands and or treefolk, create a 3/4 green treefolk creature token with reach. So this is pretty sweet. It's Rampant Growth for 1 extra mana that may give us a creature with a nice big butt. You know, it only becomes a 4/5 since the difference between its power and toughness is just 1 with Doran's trigger. But we do get to count our lands and treefolk, and that includes our commander. So by the time we've gotten our commander out, we've probably got 4 lands in play and our commander himself, which is a treefolk. So we only need 2 more lands and or treefolk, of which we have several, to be able to cast Tend the Springs and get a little creature out of it as well. So this is not an ideal card, and it's really probably better in Limited, but this is the kind of deck we'd want it in if we wanted to put it in a commander deck at all. So yeah. Next is Weathered Sentinels, one of our defenders. This is from the New Capenna commander decks. Really cool. 3 generic mana for a 2/5 artifact creature wall. It has Defender, and also Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. And it can attack players who attacked us during their last turn, as though it didn't have Defender. Meaning if one of our opponents attacks us, we can block with the Weathered Sentinels. It will become a 5/8 thanks to Doran. Hopefully we kill whatever they're attacking with because they forgot about Doran. And then we can attack with it on our next turn, and it will still become a 5/8, unless we remember it has the last ability, because it'll get +3/+3 and indestructible in addition. So it's an 8/11, indestructible, vigilance, reach, trample. And it has defender, but it can attack as though it didn't. So that's a lot of cool stuff. I really like this card. This is a great deck for it. Next up is Welcoming Vampire. 2 and a white for a 2/3 flying vampire that says whenever one or more creatures we control with power 2 or less enter, draw a card, and this only triggers once each turn. So every time we play one of our many creatures that has less than 2 power, we draw a card. I think we have in excess of 20 cards that are those creatures. Yeah, so that's a lot of card draw we can get off this vampire, and with Doran in play, it attacks and blocks as a 3/4 flyer for 3. That's pretty good. Arasta of the Endless Web, card I really love in Commander. 2 and double green for a 3/5 legendary enchantment creature, Spider, with reach. That says whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery, we make a 1/2 green spider token creature token with reach. So Arasta is a 3/5, so becomes a 5/7 when she attacks or blocks, but also makes little 1/2s every time our opponents cast instants and sorceries, so we just have more and more blockers that block very well because they become 2/3s with Doran, and they have reach. So yeah, we can just fill up our board with a bunch of tokens and not worry about it. Next up is Arbor Adorant from Tarkir Dragonstorm Commander. This is 3 and a green for a 2/4 Dog Druid that says tap to add 1 mana of any color, or tap to add X mana of any one color, where X is the greatest toughness among other creatures you control. So it cares about other creatures. We can't use it to just tap for 4 on its own, but for example, if Arasta is already in play, I mean, that's tapping for 5 mana of one color, which is why it's worth spending 4 mana on a mana dork. But it does attack and block as a 4/6, so pretty good. We're running Beast Whisperer in this deck. It's 2 and double green for a 2/3 Elf Druid that lets us draw a card every time we cast a creature spell. Got a lot of creature spells in this deck. Gonna draw a lot more of them and cast even more. And again, bigger butt than its front side. Bedrock Tortoise is next. I love this card. 3 and a green for an 0/6 turtle, so it attacks and blocks as a 6/12 that says during your turn, creatures you control have hexproof. Great protection for us. And each creature we control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So this is another one of our cards that gives us the ability to do damage based on toughness. So the Bedrock Tortoise attacks as a 6/12 and does damage as a 12/12. So this is a 4 mana Galta, if you want to think of it that way. No trample, but all our creatures have hexproof. Love this guy. Next is Felithar the Steadfast, commander from the Tarkir Dragonstorm Commander decks. If you haven't played this deck, by the way, the Abzan deck from Dragonstorm, very fun. So Felithar is the same cost as Doran, 1 and Abzan mana, for a 0/5 human warrior that says each creature we control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Again, it's the Doran ability, but it's not symmetrical. And creatures we control can attack as though they didn't have Defender. So if we were a Defenders deck, Felithar would be a great commander for that. As it stands, we have a couple of Defenders, and Felithar makes them able to attack without even, for Weathered Sentinels, having the condition for attacking as though it didn't have Defender. Felithar also says if we pay 3, tap, and sack another creature, we can draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness, then discard cards equal to its power. Sometimes, for some creatures, like the Bedrock Tortoise, that means pay 3, tap, and sack the Bedrock Tortoise to draw 6 and discard none. Pretty sweet. It's also possible that we may want to go harder with this, because remember, we can attack or block with the Bedrock Tortoise, just using it as an example. And when we do with Doran in play, it becomes a 6/12. We can then sacrifice it to Felithar, draw 12 cards, and discard 6. So sometimes it feels better to just, if we're going to sacrifice it anyway, just draw the 6. But it's much better to say, I want to get 12 more cards into my hand, even though I know I have to discard 6 of them, because that means you're discarding the 6 worst cards in your hand. So you've gotten a lot more selection that way. Totally worth it. Next up is Mr. Babycakes. That's the playtest name for Forgotten Ancient. 3 and a green for an 0/3 elemental he's not a tree folk, even though I know this picture makes it look like one. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a 1/1 counter on this creature. That's any player, any spell. Doesn't have to be during our turn, doesn't have to be during their turn. it's not necessarily just us, but it does include us. Anytime anyone casts a spell, put a counter on the Forgotten Ancient. He gets a trigger. And at the beginning of our upkeep, we can move any number of counters from the Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. It does not say other creatures you control, so we can use this politically. We can say, look, if you leave me alone for this turn, I'll put 5 counters on your commander. Whatever. You go ahead and take them. That's probably a bad deal. Don't probably make that deal unless you know something that I don't. But the point is, you can do that. Most of the time, though, you're putting these counters on other creatures that you control. And it won't change the bonus that Doran gives them when they attack or block, because of the same reason that the card we saw earlier that blights itself, or blights our creatures, Sinister Gnarlbark, doesn't lose that same bonus, because a -1/-1 counter or a +1/+1 counter both subtract or add to the power and the toughness. So that means that the difference between the two doesn't change. So if Forgotten Ancient gets, 10 counters on it by the time we get back to our turn, it's a 10-13. So it blocks or attacks as a 13-16. The difference is still 3. So yeah, just a great way to pump up all of our creatures and pass it all around. Next is Indomitable Ancients. This is 2 and double white for a 2/10 Treefolk Warrior with no rules text. This is a vanilla creature. That's fine, but it's a Treefolk. We got Treefolk. Our commander's a Treefolk. He likes Treefolk. That's not enough. What's enough is the fact that this, with Doran, attacks and blocks as a 10-12. A 10-12 for 4 is quite a lot. Is there a way for us to give this evasion of some sort? Wait until later in the video and you'll see. In any case, for 4 mana, it's a huge blocker and a very good attacker. It's worth it. Loyal Unicorn is next. Loyal Unicorn has kind of a high power for this deck, but you'll see a little bit more. For 3 and a white, we get a 3/4 Unicorn with Vigilance and a Lieutenant ability. Lieutenant abilities work when you control your commander. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, if we control our commander, we prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to creatures we control this turn. Prevent it all. And all of our other creatures get Vigilance. Vigilance is so good in this deck because Doran triggers on attacks and blocks. So we can attack with our creatures and they're huge, and then block with our creatures and they're still huge. And with Vigilance, we can do both with the same creatures. So Loyal Unicorn just enhances how good Doran is, because of course it only works with Doran in play at the beginning of combat, it's trigger. And it also prevents all damage during our turn, so we have no reason not to swing with all of our creatures, assuming we can protect the Loyal Unicorn, which we probably can. Sereth, the Viper's Fang, is next. Sereth is 2 and double green for a 3/4 legendary human warlock. Again, it's a 3/4, but there's a good reason. That says other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch, and other untapped creatures you control have Hexproof. So while our creatures are untapped, they have Hexproof. When we attack with them, assuming we don't have Vigilance or something, they suddenly have Death Touch. So imagine being swung at with a 10-12 Death Touch. Are you blocking that? Yeah, if you have like a token or something, you want to chump block it. But if you have something you really care about, it probably didn't need Death Touch to be threatening, but it sure has it. So are you willing to take 10 damage to save your creature? You might not be. You might be willing to sacrifice even your commander to stop that. But what about one of our smaller creatures, like an 0/4? Well, it's a 4/8, so it's definitely not going to die when you block it, most probably, because you probably don't have something with power 8. And it's only doing 4 damage, and it's definitely going to kill your creature no matter how much toughness it has because of Death Touch. So won't you just let it through? Probably you will. That's how Death Touch becomes a sort of pseudo-evasion. So being able to have Death Touch when we're attacking, and Hexproof when we're not, when we're blocking even as well, very, very strong protective ability. And it doesn't end there, because we can pay 1 and tap Sereth to untap one of our creatures or lands. So I didn't put this in our ramps category, but we can untap lands with this if we wanted to sort of filter, Soul Ring mana, let's say, into colored mana. We can tap a forest, tap a Soul Ring, use one of the colorless from Soul Ring to tap Sereth to untap the forest, and now we've got 2 green in our pool rather than we've got 2 green and a colorless rather than 2 colorless and a green. But really, this is here to protect our creatures. We want to be able to attack with a creature, it suddenly has Death Touch. And if someone tries to hurt it, well, we just untap it and it has Hexproof now. It doesn't have Death Touch anymore, but it's still attacking. So, seems pretty good. Yeah, I like Sereth. Next up is another one of our defenders, Tree of Perdition. This card is a little pricey, but because of the Lorwyn Eclipsed Commander product, it has gone down a little bit. There are some other printings of it that are a lot more, though. So I wouldn't be surprised if this price increases in the coming days, coming weeks even. But I hope not, because it's a really fun card. Tree of Perdition is 3 and a black for an 0/13 plant with Defender. That means it attacks and blocks as a 13/26. But it doesn't attack, because it has Defender. Unless we have Felithar in play. But it's fine. It blocks everything that doesn't have Death Touch, that isn't evasive in the form of like Menace or Flying. Like, it's a 13/26 when it blocks and our commander's in play. Nothing's getting through that. And it doesn't matter because we can tap it to exchange target opponent's life total with this creature's toughness. So we do that before it attacks or blocks, while it's still an 0/13. And we take one of our opponents who's still at 40 life maybe, and just make them 13 life, and from that point on, Tree of Perdition is a 0/40 that attacks and blocks as a 40/80. That's just crazy. So this is a sweet thing for us to do when we are attacking with other creatures and they are not blocked. And we can see we're about to do 13 or more damage. We activate Tree of Perdition, give our opponent a life total of 13, whatever their life might have been before, hopefully higher than that, and then we do all of our damage, and they just die. And Tree of Perdition's life toughness remains whatever it was, whatever our opponent's life total was before we activated and resolved this ability. So a very sneaky thing that is not likely to get forgotten about because Tree of Perdition is a known card, but you never know. Sometimes people just forget what you have on board, and you might have a very friendly pod, but by the rules, it's not your responsibility to remind players, what is public information. In any case, Tree of Perdition is a lot of fun, and I'd like to see more people play it. So yeah, good times. Next up is Vicious Battle Rager. This is an interesting one for this deck. 3 and a black for a 1/5 Dwarf Barbarian. So again, it blocks or attacks as a 5/9 with Doran in play. And when it enters, we take the initiative. So we'll talk about the initiative in a moment, but it also has an ability called Spiked Retribution. Whenever this creature becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller loses 5 life. So this is Afflict, basically. The Amonkhet block ability, Afflict. So either we're getting in for 5, since it's a 5/9 with our commander in play, or we're getting blocked, and it's still a 5/9, and the blocking creature's controller, the defender, still loses 5 life. So that's pretty sweet, because that works even if we're attacking something like a Planeswalker. If we attack someone's, their Narset, and Narset Planeswalker that is, since there are Narset creatures, and they decide to block us, the player themselves will lose the 5 life. So that's pretty nice, being able to just sort of guarantee damage / life loss on them. But in any case, a 1/5 for 4 is pretty good in our deck. However, when it enters, we take the initiative. Now, what is the initiative? Let's take a look at the initiative. This is a complicated mechanic, but it's not too bad. So don't look at this, that's complicated. What happens is, when you take the initiative, you get to venture into the Undercity. The Undercity is this dungeon. What that means is you put a little marker on this front entrance, this front top room, and then every time you venture into the Undercity again, which either happens when you take the initiative, or at the start of your upkeep, when you still have the initiative, you venture into the Undercity again. So it happens every upkeep of the person who has the initiative, and it happens every time you take the initiative. We'll talk about how you take it in a moment. You put your marker on the top room, and you get its effect, which for the secret entrance is Lay of the Land. Search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. So it just draws you a basic. That's pretty good. And then, whenever you would venture into the Undercity again, you get to either go to the Forge or to the Lost Well. And then from there, you can only follow a path that takes you through it. You can't go to the Forge and then the Stash because they're not connected. And then once you complete it, Thrown to the Dead Tree, you get this awesome big ability. And if you would take the initiative again or venture into the Undercity again, you just start back at the top and gain yourself another basic land in hand. So lots and lots of value you can get from this. And the initiative, while I don't think it's as good of a mechanic for Commander as the Monarch, it's a little more complicated. It sure does encourage people to interact with each other. So it could be a lot of fun for that. The way you take the initiative is by doing combat damage to whoever has it. So whenever somebody does combat damage to you when you have the initiative, they now have the initiative, which means they immediately venture into the Undercity. If you want to take it back, you just do combat damage to them. You will take the initiative back, and then you will move your token to the next room and get to keep getting more value. So a lot of that to say, yeah, venturing into the Undercity is a lot, but it's worth it. Vicious Battle Rager is the only card in our deck that lets us take the initiative, but it can get it started for us, and it's pretty good on its own even without that. Next up is Beitor, Kin to All, from Tarkir Dragonstorm's main set. 2 and Abzan mana is a 5/7 legendary spirit dragon with flying that says, at the beginning of your end step, if creatures you control have toughness 10 or greater, draw a card. Then, meaning if this next thing is also true, you'll draw a card and then do something else. If creatures you control have toughness 20 or greater, untap each creature you control. And then if creatures you control have toughness 40 or greater, each opponent loses half their life rounded up. So in all likelihood, are we going to get to the 20 toughness? We probably are. It's not going to be that hard for us. Are we going to get to the 10 toughness? Very, very easily. We don't have to worry about that. This might just be draw a card during your end step every turn. Are we going to get to the 40 toughness? I don't know that we will. Even if we do, it's probably going to be late enough in the game that our opponents losing half their life might mean they're only losing, 5 or 10 of their life because they might be down enough. But in any case, someone might be holding on with an awful lot of life left, and if that's the case, Beitor can do a lot of work on them if we get up to 40 toughness. Even if not, though, just drawing a card every turn is pretty good with a 5/7 flyer. That, of course, with Doran out, attacks and blocks as a 7/9. Fecund Greenshell is next. 3 and double green for a 4/6 elemental turtle with reach. Such a cool art. I really like this art. It says as long as we control 10 or more lands, creatures we control get +2/+2. So that's just a static Anthem effect across our board. It includes the green shell. And whenever this creature or another creature we control with toughness greater than its power enters, we look at the top card of our library, and if it's a land, we can put it on the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, we can put that card into our hand. So we're either drawing a card, essentially, or ramping ourselves, based on whatever's on top of our library. And that will happen every time we play not every creature in our deck, but almost every creature in our deck, including the green shell themselves. Very, very nice. Next is Magnagoth Treefolk from Planeshift. 4 and a green for a 2/6 Treefolk. So again, it attacks and blocks with Doran in play as a 6/10. And it has Domain, which is for each basic land type among lands we control, this creature has Landwalk of that type. So as long as we have a land that has the Plains type on it, whether it's a basic Plains or not, Magnagoth Treefolk has Planeswalk. That doesn't make it a Planeswalker. It means that if we attack someone who controls a land that is of the Plains type, whether or not it is a basic Plains, they can't block the Treefolk. Landwalking is an old mechanic that's an evasive mechanic. It means this creature is unblockable if the defending player controls a land of the particular type. So Magnagoth Treefolk might be unblockable if any of our opponents control forests, plains, or swamps, because we are likely to get all three of those out in the form of lands that have those types. So being able to attack with a 6/10 is pretty good. An unblockable 6/10, even better. An unblockable 6/10 that we've put a bunch of counters on or pumped up with the elemental turtles. Yeah, very nice. And because Landwalk really is just kind of an annoying older mechanic, again, this is a card that might draw a sort of inappropriate amount of ire from our opponents. So if they decide to use a removal spell on it versus something that's much better than it, yeah, let them do it. We'd rather lose this than something really good. Next up, we have Reach of Branches. This is 4 and a green for an instant, but it's a kindred instant. It is a Treefolk spell, even though it is not a creature. So that's not relevant in our deck, but it's nice to know that this has got the Treefolk type because we're running, Doran. This is 4 and a green to make a 2/5 green Treefolk Shaman creature token. So just 5 mana to make a 2/5, which is fine. It'll attack and block as a 5/8. But whenever a forest we control enters, not a basic forest, just any forest, we can return this card from our graveyard to our hand. So that's very nice. Being able to just cast this for 5, play a forest, it comes back to our hand, maybe we can cast it for 5 right away again, and just keep doing so. It's sort of like, I was going to say it's like Retrace, but we're not having to discard the card, we're just having to play it. So landfall for just forests? Yeah, anyway, I like this card. Next up, it's Sapling of Kolfanor. So she is a 2/5 legendary Treefolk Shaman for 3 and double Golgari hybrid mana. So we can play this for 3 and double black, 3 and double green, or 3 a black and a green, whatever we like. The Sapling is indestructible, and whenever she attacks, reveal the top card of our library. If it is a creature card, we gain life equal to its toughness, lose life equal to its power, and put it in our hand. So for most of our cards in this deck, I think there's only one card in the deck that will cause us to aggregate lose life. I think we have a 2/1 creature. But some of our other creatures are equal power and toughness, so we're gaining and losing life the same amount. But most of our creatures are going to gain us more life than we're losing, and all of those creatures are going to let us draw a card. So we've got plenty of creatures in the deck that we can find on the top of our library. We're going to be drawing them when the Sapling attacks, and of course she attacks as a 5/7, so pretty good. 5/7 indestructible. Next up is Shadrix Silverquill. This is one of the Elder Dragons, the Founder Dragons from Strixhaven, which we're going to be going back to in April. So Shadrix Silverquill is 3, a white, and a black for a 2/5 legendary Elder Dragon with flying and double strike. And at the beginning of combat on our turn, we may choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. We may choose 2. If we decide not to choose any, that's fine. But we can't choose 1. We have to either choose 2 or none. The modes are: target player creates a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying, target player draws a card and loses the life, or target player puts a 1/1 counter on each creature they control. That includes Shadrix themselves. So Shadrix Silverquill, very powerful for this deck, lets us pump up our creatures when we needed to, lets us draw cards when we need, lets us have another flyer that doesn't get cool benefits from Doran, but that's okay. Usually we want to use this much like we do our Flumph and treat it a little bit, group huggy. We want to give out Inklings to our opponents to make them feel like they have something they can block with, because people love getting a free flyer, almost a free Windrake. So doing that is not going to matter as much. It's not going to matter as much to that player, at least, that we're getting a card out of it, or a counter on all of our creatures. So we make friends with one player, and we can deal with their Inklings later. Not worried about it. Next up is Baldan, Century Herdmaster. This is, I'm not sure about this, but I think this is one of the first times, or the first time, that a Universes Beyond card that they made a Universes Within version of was printed into a Commander product. So this was from the Street Fighter Secret Lair originally. This was E Honda that they reprinted as this guy, Baldan, Century Herdmaster, who I believe is on Dominaria. Also with amazing Zoltan Boros art. Love this art. Everyone looks so happy, even the oxen. Anyway, so this is 4 and double white for a 0/7 legendary human warrior that says during your turn, each creature assigns combat damage equal to toughness rather than its power. So great, another non-symmetrical Doran the Siege Tower effect. And whenever Baldan attacks, up to 100 target creatures each get plus O plus X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in our hand. So the more cards we have in hand, the more toughness bonus all of our creatures get. And we don't have 100 creatures in our deck, so this is all of our creatures basically, including Baldan himself. So what's nice about this is a whenever he attacks trigger. Our commander is whenever a creature we control attacks or blocks. So what we can do is have Baldan trigger at the same time as all of our other creatures, obviously, because he'll attack and whatever other creatures we have attacking will attack as well. We'll get a trigger from Balden for himself and a trigger from Doran for Balden. And we'll also get a trigger from Doran for all of our other attacking creatures. What we do is we let Balden's own trigger resolve first, targeting all of our other creatures and Balden himself, pumping up all of their toughnesses. So if we have 3 cards in hand, Balden becomes a 0-10. Then Doran's trigger resolves, and Balden becomes a 10-20, because we've added the amount of cards in our hand to the toughness before we've let Doran's trigger resolve. And we've done that for all of our creatures. So every one of our creatures is going to increase the distance between its power and toughness, or the difference, I should say. Distance is fine too, by the number of cards we have in hand. Balden just makes everything so much bigger. And if we do that, we follow that example, and Balden is now attacking as a 10-20. Remember, it's our turn, so we're going to be assigning damage based on its toughness. So we're doing 20 damage with our 10-20 attacker, and that's just one of the attackers we have. So worth the 6 mana. Very nice. Next up is Kulfanor. We've seen the sapling of Kulfanor. Here's Kulfanor themselves. Kulfanor is 3 and Abzan mana for a 3/7 legendary Treefolk Shaman with Vigilance and Reach. More Treefolk. It also says when Kulfanor or another creature we control dies, return up to 1 other target creature card with lesser toughness from your graveyard to your hand. So we have a lot of big toughness creatures, but we also have a lot of even bigger toughness creatures. So this is not a guarantee that we're going to be able to get something back, but we will get something probably half of the time, maybe even more than half the time, just depending on how things go. And Kulfanor attacks as a 7/11 Vigilance Reach. That's pretty good. And blocks, of course, as a 7/11 Vigilance Reach. But we want to be able to attack because Vigilance. That's great. Next up is Dragonlord Dromoka. 4, a green and a white for a 5/7 legendary Elder Dragon that can't be countered, that is flying and lifelink, and that says our opponents can't cast spells during our turn. That's great. This is a very nice protective ability. It means we don't have to worry about anything that's not an onboard trick, or, I don't know, something like channeling Iganjo or something like that. Something that's not a spell that they wouldn't be able to cast on our turn. It gives us the ability to attack without having to worry about anything that isn't already on the battlefield. And Dromoka themselves attacks and blocks as a 7/9. That's pretty good. Next, from the Final Fantasy set, is Jumbo Cactuar. This is 5 and double green for a 1/7 plant with a 10,000 Needles ability that says whenever this creature attacks, it gets plus 9,999 /+0 until end of turn, making it a 10,000/7. So why do we have this? Well, because it attacks and blocks as a 7/8 or a 7/13. 7/13 is pretty good. So the difference between those two, right? That's what we care about, right? The difference between its power and toughness? Yeah? So what does that mean? So Jumbo Cactuar, it's a 1/7. We attack. We let Doran's ability resolve first, let's say. It will make the Jumbo Cactuar into a 7/13. That then gets 9,999 additional power. So it's a 10,006 /7/13. But what if we let them resolve in the opposite order? What if we let it become a 10,000/7? That means it will get its 10,000 Needles ability resolved first. It'll become a 10,000/7. Then Doran will trigger, making it plus 9,993 /plus 9,993. Because the difference doesn't specify which one is being subtracted from the other. It's just what the difference is. So it will add 9,993 to that 10,000 power, making it 19,993. And its toughness will be 10,006, because that's 9,993 plus 13. So it becomes the biggest thing you can imagine. And once that's done, of course, they block you with a 1/1 servo, and that's the end of combat. But if you have trample or some other way to get it to do damage, which again, we'll talk about evasion soon, Jumbo Cactuar is not in this deck to be a great card. It's in this deck to be a really fun card. So it's worth $1 for being the biggest attacker on the battlefield. Next up, also from Final Fantasy, another big number, is Ancient Adamantoise. This is 5 and triple green for an 8/20. So it attacks and blocks as a 20/32. Yeah, pretty good. It's a turtle. It's got vigilance. It's got ward 3 because it needed more protection. And damage isn't removed from this creature during cleanup steps. This is really interesting. That means we have to track the damage it takes because the damage sticks around permanently as opposed to every other creature in Magic where the damage goes away during the cleanup step at the end of every turn. All damage that would be dealt to you and to other permanents you control is dealt to this creature instead. Oh, so it protects us if we would take damage instead the Adamantoise does, and that damage doesn't go away during cleanup steps. Interesting. And when this creature dies, exile it and create 10 tapped treasure tokens. So it explodes in the form of sweet treasures. Great. So being able to use this is pretty likely to be only a couple of turns that we get to have it, because our opponents are going to want to deal with it, to block with it, or to block it rather, to, not take a whole bunch of damage, since it, again, attacks as a 20/32. But yeah, it's got ward 3. We're not really that worried about them removing it, and if they want to spend their mana to pay the ward on top of the cost for a removal spell, good for them. As long as they don't exile it, when it dies, it's going to make those 10 trapped treasures for us. So we get something cool out of it. This is another card that's in the deck because it's very good with our strategy, and it does interesting things, and it's fun. So yeah. Next up is a very expensive enchantment, Sapling Nursery. 6 and double green. This is a new Lorwyn Eclipsed card. It's an enchantment, but it has affinity for forests, meaning its generic mana cost is reduced by 1 for every forest we control. Again, it doesn't have to be a basic forest. We have a couple of dual-typed lands, so those also reduce its cost. We could end up paying just double green for this. It has Landfall. Whenever a land we control enters, we make a 3/4 green treefolk creature token with reach. So it just spits out creatures with big butts, and they're treefolk. Great. And they attack and block while Doran's in play as 4/5s. And we can pay 1 and a green and exile this after we've spent so much time trying to get it out to give all of our treefolk and all of our forests indestructible until end of turn. So this affects the tokens it makes, some of the other treefolk creatures we have in the deck, and our commander himself. So yeah, very expensive, but a very cool card that makes more and more big butt creatures that we can do things with. Finally, are you flapping? Zetalpa Primal Dawn is here. 6 and double white for a 4/8 legendary Elder Dinosaur with flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. The sky takes flight and the earth trembles, and so do I. This is such a cool card from Rivals of Ixalan originally, and reprinted on Foundations. You can get it for 15 cents. It's so expensive, but it does so much, and it's so much fun. It attacks and blocks as an 8/12 while Doran's in play, and I will remind you that 8/12 is indestructible, has vigilance, flies, tramples, and has double strike. So that's 16 damage trampling over every time Zetalpa attacks while Doran's in play. 8 double striking damage, 4 blocks as well. And it's indestructible. What do you want? It's the huge... Are you flapping? It's big. I love this card. It's so much fun. Anyway, so those are our big butts. We have an awful lot of other cards in the deck, but that's most of our game plan. Just play the big things and let our commander do what he does to make them even better. We're going to talk about all the cards that supplement our game plan, but first, we want to go over some of these support categories, so we're going to do that, starting with card advantage. As usual, I've used the word draw to represent card advantage. It doesn't mean all of these cards actually draw us a card, just gives us access to another card we can put into our hand, or cast or play some other way. So Bushwhack is a good example of this. For a single green, we get a sorcery that either lets us Lay of the Land, search for a basic, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle, or we can have one of our creatures fight another creature. So it's a removal spell or a card advantage spell. It's not real advantage because it's costing us Bushwhack to get this basic land, but we are putting a basic land into our hand, so close enough. We get a bush, or we whack something. Love it. Next is Herd Heirloom. 1 and a green for an artifact that taps to add 1 mana of any color, but only for creature spells. That's pretty good. It's a 2 mana rock for that. And until end of turn, target creature we control with power 4 or greater gains trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So we can give out trample every turn, and curiosity, the ability to draw a card once that creature deals combat damage to a player, to any of our creatures with power 4 or greater. Now, do we have a lot of creatures with power 4 or greater? We only have a few, until they attack. And then Doran triggers, and if the difference between their power and toughness is big enough, they're able to do a lot more damage. And that, since it's a bonus, their power does go up. So at that point, after attacking with them and having the Doran ability trigger, that's when we activate Herd Heirloom, and they get trample and the curiosity effect, since they're now sort of eligible for that. Or we can wait until after blocks, because maybe our opponent thinks, well, I'm just going to chump block with this little 1/1 servo, and they're not going to be able to, I'm not going to have to take a bunch of damage, because they've forgotten we have Herd Heirloom, which lets us tap it then, after blocks, before damage is done, to give our creature that now, thanks to Doran, has power 4 or greater, trample. And we also get a card off of it. So yeah, very nice. Hollow Merc Siege from Tarkir Dragonstorm is next. A green and a black for an enchantment that says, as it enters, we choose Sultai or Abzan. If we choose Sultai, it will always have this ability, and if we choose Abzan, it will always have this one. So the Sultai ability is whenever a counter is put on a creature you control, draw a card. This triggers only once each turn. Or, whenever you attack, put a 1/1 counter on target attacking creature, and it gains menace until end of turn. In this deck, we want to choose Abzan most of the time, because we really want menace, and that little bit of pump is very helpful to us. It doesn't affect the efficacy of Doran's ability, because the difference in the power and toughness, again, remains the same with counters, but it makes our creatures bigger, and menace is really annoying if we have a big creature that it's on, because it's likely to mean our opponent is going to have to lose 2 creatures to trade with it, or just to block it. However, it's fine if we want to choose Sultai if Hollow Merc Siege happens to come down after we have a couple of ways to get counters repeatedly on our creatures. Being able to get card advantage for us is not bad at all. We are usually choosing Abzan in this deck, but Sultai is not a bad option either. We have Abzan Charm. Abzan mana, a white, a black, and a green, for an instant that says choose one. Either exile target creature with power 3 or greater, get rid of something big, draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, worth 2 life to get 2 cards for a Abzan Divination, or distribute 2 1/1 counters among 1 or 2 creatures. So we can put 2 counters on one thing or 1 counter on each of 2. Yeah, whenever we need it, we've got an instant that helps us out. Garruk's Uprising. I went back and forth about this. There is, in the considering section, an enchantment for 1 and a green that gives all of our creatures trample. Garruk's Uprising is an enchantment for 2 and a green that gives all of our creatures trample. So why did I go with Garruk's Uprising? Well, because when it enters, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, we draw a card. And whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters under our control, we draw a card. So this is not happening that often in our deck. It happens a few times. It's not bad when it does, it's okay. And if we have our tortoise, we have a tortoise whose name is Fecund Greenshell. If Fecund Greenshell, for example, has its second ability online, if we have 10 or more lands, our creatures get +2/+2, then that means whenever any of our creatures with a printed power of 2 or greater enter, they are entering with power 4 or greater. Meaning, we'll draw a card off of them. So not that likely to happen, this last ability to draw cards, but not unlikely for this to happen, because we can, it says when this enchantment enters, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater already, we draw a card. So we simply play Garruk's Uprising post-combat, after we've attacked with something and gotten our Doran trigger. It's very likely we have something that currently still has power 4 or greater, so we can get a card off of it with Garruk's Uprising. Is that worth a whole extra mana? I feel like the ability to maybe get some more cards is pretty good. And anyway, this is a much more inexpensive card than that other one that's just 1 and a green and only gives everything trample. Besides, 1 and a green to just give everything trample is more boring than all this stuff. So yeah, Plus, you don't have to get the Garruk's Uprising printing that is the Wilds of Eldraine Enchanting Tales printing. I just prefer those. So there are definitely cheaper ones. Next up, we've seen Glunch. Glunch can let us draw a card if we wish. Kutzil is next from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. 1, a green and a white for a 3/3 legendary cat warrior, a 3/3. So doesn't trigger Doran. We can't do cool Doran things with it. Doesn't get discounted by Doran either. But it does mean our opponents can't cast spells during our turn. So we've seen that already with Dromoka. This is very strong. And whenever one or more creatures we control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, we draw a card. This is crazy in our deck. Because Doran is pumping up almost all of our creatures. Kutzil not itself, but almost all of our other creatures. So when they get pumped up, if they do combat damage to a player, Kutzil says they just have Curiosity. We just draw a card off of each one of them. Or no, off of one or more when they deal with damage. So all of our creatures going at one player, doesn't matter how many of them hit, we only draw one card. Our creatures going at multiple players, whenever they hit, we'll draw a card for each of those players because it's a player. So we'll get a different trigger for each player this happens to, irrespective of the number of creatures each dealing damage to them. So yeah, Kutzil, very likely to be an extra card every turn during the combat damage step. Lorwyn of the Third Path. I mentioned her before. She's our 2/1. She's 2 and a white for a legendary human artificer with vigilance. She's a 2/1. And when she enters, we destroy up to one target artifact or enchantment. She's a disenchant on a stick. And we can, once she no longer has summoning sickness, that is, we can tap her and we and another opponent each draw a card. So a little bit more group hugginess here. It's not really meant to be a sub-theme in this deck, but it exists. And it lets us continue to make friends with one person and repeatedly draw a card every time, if we're willing to give them one too, which is fine. We've seen the Sinister Gnarlbark. It is our weird Phyrexian Arena with Blight. We like that. Welcoming Vampire, we've seen, triggers on an awful lot of our creatures, drawing us a card once each turn. Beast Whisperer, every time we cast any creature spell, we draw a card. Felithar lets us sacrifice a creature to draw cards equal to its toughness and discard cards equal to its power, so we're probably up on cards that way. Vicious Battle Rager, at the very least, when we take the initiative, puts a land in our hand. That seems good. Baitor lets us draw a card at our end step if we have toughness, total toughness among our creatures of 10 or greater, which we likely will. Feckin' Greenshell lets us look at the top card of our library every time one of our creatures enters that has toughness greater than its power, and we get to either put that card in our hand, or if it's a land, put it in the play tapped. So very nice. Sapling of Kolvanor, of course, lets us put a card in our hand every time it attacks, and Shadrix lets us draw a card and lose a life if we wish. So that is our card advantage section. Let's talk about acceleration, which again I've just shorthanded as ramp. Of course, we're running Soul Ring. It's 1 mana. It's an artifact that makes mana, so it's a mana rock. It taps for 2 colorless mana. That's extremely powerful. It's worth it. Put it in your deck. Arcane Signet is also very good, especially in a deck like this. It's a 2 mana rock, a 2 mana artifact that taps for mana. This one taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, so it can tap for white or black or green, and it comes in untapped. It's excellent. Of course we're running this. Farseek is next. This is one of our rampant growths. A 1 and a green sorcery that lets us search our library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. We don't have any we don't have any islands or mountains in this deck. But we have plains and we have swamps. They don't have to be basics. We have dual-typed lands. So we can find one of those, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. And then when it untaps, we have accelerated ourselves beyond just white for plains or black for swamp. We might have gotten something that's black and green, so we have extra green mana for us. Farseek is very good. We're also running Felwar Stone, 2 generic mana for a rock that taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. That means, at the very least, this is a 2 mana untapped rock that produces mana we can spend for generic mana costs. That's pretty good. If our opponents are 100% red and or blue, yeah, we can't do it for anything else. But if this is coming in untapped and making black mana for us because one of our opponents happens to also have black, we're set. You know, it's at least that. And if we have someone who's an opponent that's playing green as well, which is pretty likely because it's commander, yeah, now it's a 2 different colors of mana producing rock that came in untapped and cost 2 mana. Yeah, it's worth it for us. We've seen the Great Forest Druid. It's a mana dork that taps for 1 of any color. Herd Heirloom can tap for 1 of any color, but only for creature spells. That's okay with me. Leafkin Druid also taps for just green, but maybe 2 green if we have 4 or more creatures when we tap it. Nature's Lore is sort of the mirror of Farseek. Nature's Lore is 1 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search for a forest, then put it on the battlefield and shuffle. So why is this $2.70 versus the 50 cents of Farseek? The reason is because Nature's Lore does not say put that card on the battlefield tapped. So this can find only forests, but they can come in untapped. So if we want, we can find a basic forest with this, and we've sort of gotten a rebate on our green mana we spent on it. We can also find a dual-typed land, and if that land would come in tapped, well, then it comes in tapped. But if it wouldn't come in tapped, then we've gotten a dual land untapped into play, and we have a couple of those in our deck. We'll talk about that when we get more into the land base at the end of the video. So we've seen Overgrown Zealot. It's another 0/4 that taps for 1 of any color. Glunch can make us treasures. That's ramp. Tend the Springs is an expensive actual rampant growth, but we might be able to get a 3/4 Treefolk out of it. Arbor Adorant is another mana dork that can tap for 1 mana of any color, or maybe quite a lot of mana if we have other creatures with high toughness, which we will. Feckin' Greenshell can give us lands into play tapped from the top of our library, and Ancient Adamantoise, of course, explodes when it dies into 10 tapped treasure tokens. Very nice. So that is our acceleration section. Let's talk about removal. These are our interaction cards, and again, I'm just using removal as a shorthand for that. So Bushwhack, we've seen already, it's a fight spell. Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, as I often say, are almost the same card. They're both instants that cost 1 white that exile a creature and give that creature's controller a little kickback. Swords to Plowshares lets that creature's controller gain life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller rampant growth. They search for a basic, put it on the battlefield, tapped, and shuffle. So both are very strong, instant speed, a single mana, get rid of a creature, it's gone forever. Yeah, these are both excellent. Lignify is a card I don't usually play, but it was just thematic for the deck. 1 and a green for a Kindred Enchantment Treefolk aura. So again, it doesn't matter that it has the Kindred type Treefolk, but it's nice that it does. It enchants a creature, and enchanted creature is a Treefolk with base power and toughness 0/4 and loses all abilities. So the idea is we put this on one of our opponent's creatures. They now have a Treefolk as well. We've just sort of planted a tree in that creature's chest. It doesn't have any abilities anymore, and yeah, there it is. This is a great spell because if we put this on an opponent's commander, they have to contrive a way to let that creature die, usually, if they don't have a way to remove Lignify. And it's hard to get that creature to die if it's got a pretty good toughness. Even if they want to block something, the attacking creature might not have a power of 4 or greater, so can't get rid of it. Anyway, just a nice thematic removal spell for us. Tear Asunder is also very good. 1 and a green for an instant with kicker of 1 and a black. So we can, when we cast it, pay a total of 2, a green and a black, and we get its kicked cost. So if we don't kick it, we exile target artifact or enchantment. It's just a slightly better return to nature. No, what am I saying? Naturalized. There you go. And if we do play the kicker cost, then we exile a non-land permanent instead. So we can get rid of anything but a land for 4 mana. Very nice. Next, we've seen Abzan Charm. Lets us exile a creature with power of 3 or greater at instant speed. I like Emergency Eject as my answer to Generous Gift or Beast Within, that sort of spell. I don't typically like to destroy lands because I know most Commander players, at least at the level of the decks that I'm building, don't like to see that kind of land denial at their tables. So I just run the version of these spells that gives them a worse payback for or a worse kickback because they can't hit lands in the first place. So Stroke of Midnight's very nice for this, or Crib Swap, also very good, but I prefer Emergency Eject if I can, because it doesn't give them a creature. It's 2 and a white for an instant that destroys a non-land permanent, and instead of giving them a 1/1 creature, it gives them a Lander token, which is a Wayfarer's Bauble. They can pay 2, tap, and sack it to rampant growth. So this is very nice because it doesn't just not give them a blocker that they can use or a creature to otherwise sacrifice. It gives them an artifact that they have to pay into to get anything out of, and when they get it, it's a basic that comes in tapped. So yeah, I think Emergency Eject is slept on when it comes to non-land removal spells. We've seen Lorwyn. Lorwyn disenchants something when she comes in. Foul Renewal is next. This is so cool. This is 3 and a black for an instant that says return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the toughness of the card returned this way. This is so sweet because it's a Raise Dead that you get to turn into a removal spell. We get to get one of our creatures back, and our creatures have huge toughness, so we get to kill something in the process. Very sweet. Finally, we have Will of the Abzan. This is 3 and a black for a sorcery that says choose one of these two, but if you control a commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both instead. You don't have to, but you may. The first is any number of target opponents each sacrifice a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls and lose 3 life. So everyone has to sack a creature, other than us, and lose 3 life. Or return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is just Zombify. So this is Zombify with upside, if we want to think of it as a recursion spell, but it's also a removal spell that we don't get to target, but it's going to hit the scariest thing, the highest power thing for all of our opponents, plus cost them 3 life. I think that's pretty great. So that is our interaction section. We are running 2 Wraths in this deck. The first is Tip the Scales. 2 and a black for a sorcery that says sacrifice a creature. When you do, all creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the sacrificed creature's toughness. So we can choose our creature with the greatest toughness, sack it, and probably everything on the board dies, especially if we've just attacked while Doran's in play, so our creature's toughness has gotten bigger. Likely we're killing everything in play. But whether we do this before or after our own attack, we have enough toughness in our deck to choose which creature we're sacrificing, and probably still get all or almost all of our opponent's creatures while getting almost none of ours. We just choose one of our creatures with a high toughness that's enough to kill all of our opponent's creatures while not killing our higher toughness creatures. Pretty sweet. And Fell the Mighty. This is 4 and a white for a sorcery that destroys all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. So we choose our creature with the greatest power, before combat, of course, because we don't want to pump up our powers in the process. And we lose none of our creatures. Or we can do, maybe we lose some of our 3 and 4 power creatures because we've chosen something with power 1 or 2, and we lose nothing else. And everyone loses everything else. So yeah, Fell the Mighty is very nice for us. There are a couple of other spells that work similarly to this. I thought this was the best option for us, and it's very inexpensive for what it does. So those are our Wraths. Let's take a look at all the supplemental categories we have in this deck. Cards that are meant to help out our game plan without being, big butch creatures themselves. We're starting with our payoff cards. These are cards that care about toughness, or the difference in toughness and power. So we've seen Catapult Fodder. It cares about us having 3 creatures or more with toughness greater than their power, and it can flip into the Catapult Captain. Next is Kulfanor's Urn. This is 3 generic mana for an artifact that says whenever a creature with toughness 4 or greater is put into our graveyard from the battlefield, we may exile it. We're exiling it under the urn. And then at the beginning of the end step, if 3 or more cards have been exiled with this artifact, we sacrifice it. And if we do, we return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So, this is a great way to protect ourselves from a board wipe. We have the urn out, and maybe we activate the board wipe, cast it. Maybe an opponent we think they're going to, so we play this. And then everything of ours that has toughness 4 or greater, when it dies, we just put it under our urn, and then at the next end step, we get it all back. We sack the urn, get everything back, assuming we have at least 3 or more cards under it. So yeah, Kulfanor's Urn is very powerful. Tip the Scales, we've seen. This is our Wrath that cares about toughness. Arbor Adorant cares about the greatest toughness among our creatures and can make that much mana. Foul Renewal lets us raise dead something and then kill something based on the toughness of what we put back in our hand. Bator draws us a card, maybe untaps our creatures, maybe makes our opponents lose half their life, all based on our total toughness. Feckin' Green Shell gets us a sweet trigger of either putting a card into play tapped, a land that is, or putting a card in our hand every time it or another creature we control with toughness greater than its power enters. The Sapling of Kulfanor lets us look at the top card of our library when it attacks, gain and lose life based on the power and toughness of the creature, or toughness of power I should say, and then put it in our hand. Kulfanor themselves, of course, When it or one of our other creatures dies, we get to bring back one of our creatures that's already in the graveyard with lesser toughness. And we have another card we haven't seen yet. It's Canopy Gargantuan. This is 5 and double green for a 7/7 dragon with flying and ward 2. So sorry, no discount from Doran here and no pump from him either. However, at the beginning of our upkeep, we put a number of 1/1 counters on each other creature that we control equal to that creature's toughness. So it doesn't get bigger on its own, but all of our other creatures do. And those 1/1 counters don't change the difference between power and toughness on our creatures, just changes their power and toughness. It makes them huge. So yeah, Canopy Gargantuan is a definite, this is a bomb. It's gonna kill our opponents if they don't deal with it. And it's got ward 2 when they try to. Pretty good. So those are our payoffs. Now we've got pump spells. These are spells that make our things bigger. We've seen a lot of these. Hollowmark Siege, if we choose Abzan, whenever we attack, one of our creatures is getting menace until end of turn and a 1/1 counter. We have Tower Defense. 1 and a green for an instant that gives all of our creatures +0/+5 and reach until end of turn. We can use this defensively, making them all much stronger with reach. We can use this offensively, whatever we want to do. Just, we should use it before Doran's triggers resolve, because this will increase the difference between our creature's power and toughness, and therefore give a greater benefit to Doran's ability. So Tower Defense, pretty sweet for us. It's the only one of the several spells that I thought about putting in that is just a temporary boost, but it could be a temporary boost that wins us the game. We could do this before Doran's ability resolves for our creatures that are attacking, and just swing in for a whole lot of damage. Maybe we've got Garruk's Uprising in play, all of our creatures have trample, it's game over for whoever we're attacking. We've seen Abzan Charm. It lets us put 2 counters on 1 or 2 creatures. Glunch lets us put 2 counters on a creature if we wish. Forgotten Ancient gains counters every time anyone casts any spells, and we can put those counters on our other creatures during the upkeep. It doesn't have to be our creatures. We can put it on our opponent's creatures if we want to be political, or keep being nice to our one friend at the table if we're doing our little bit of group hugginess, but we've got that option. Feckin' Green Shell, once we get 10 or more lands, all of our creatures get +2/+2. Shadrix lets us put a counter on each of our creatures if we wish to. Smile at Death is next. This is 3 and double white for an enchantment from Tarkir Dragonstorm, featuring Alesha, Magic's first canonically trans character. Very cool character. It says, at the beginning of your upkeep, return up to 2 target creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a 1/1 counter on each of those creatures. So, this is amazing. We have so many creatures, as we discussed with the Welcoming Vampire, I think in excess of 20 creatures in our deck that each have power 2 or less. And Smile at Death, during our upkeep, brings 2 of them back, puts a counter on them both. So a little bit of pump, but we're really here for the recursion. Very nice. We've seen Baldan. Baldan lets us get a nice toughness pump on up to 100 creatures when Baldan attacks, based on the number of cards we have in our hand. And Canopy Gargantuan puts counters on all of our other creatures, equal to that creature's toughness, every upkeep of ours. Those are our pump spells. Now, we've talked a little bit, I'll just go to it. We've talked a little bit about these cards that let us do the Doran thing, either symmetrically or asymmetrically, of letting us assign combat damage based on our creature's toughness rather than their power. I'm calling this buttacking for our big butts. Don't judge me. We just gotta go with the joke. So we've seen all of these. Doran lets every creature on the battlefield do it. Bedrock Tortoise, Felithar, and Baldan let our creatures do it. Baldan during our turn, and Felithar and Bedrock Tortoise all the time. Yeah. So that is that section. We want to talk... Oh, nope, getting it wrong. We want to talk about Evasion. Here are the 3 cards that we have in the deck. Of course, you can add more if you want. They give our creatures Evasion. Herd Heirloom, we can tap it to give one of our creatures that has power 4 or greater at the time, Trample, plus Curiosity. Hollowmark Siege, we can, whenever we attack, give one of our creatures a 1/1 counter and menace until end of turn. And Garruk's Uprising is our answer to give all of our creatures Trample. So, very nice for us. These are our evasive cards. Next is our protection section. This protects Doran and a lot of our other creatures. So Swiftfoot Boots, we haven't seen yet. It is 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature hexproof and haste. Giving Doran hexproof, very worth it. If we get this out before Doran, and we're able to just go ahead and equip it right away, or if we have to recast Doran, hopefully not, and just we have 1 extra mana when we recast him to immediately equip the booties, totally worth it for us. I don't typically put the Lightning Greaves in my deck because I want to be able to affect my own creatures. That's not that important in this deck when it comes to Shroud versus Hexproof, although we do have things, that we might want to target Doran with the Hollowmurk Siege to give him Menace, that sort of thing. But it's really more of a matter that the Swifties are, $1.50, $2, versus the Greaves, which can run $8 to $10 or more. So just if you will have some Greaves and you want to run them instead, probably totally fine. I would just run them in addition to the boots. Kutzil makes it so our opponents can't cast spells during our turn. Bedrock Tortoise makes it so on our turn, all of our creatures have hexproof. Loyal Unicorn, whenever we go to combat, if we have our commander in play, then we prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to our creatures this turn. Sereth gives all of our creatures that are untapped hexproof and can untap one of our creatures to give them hexproof. Dromoka does the same thing as Kutzil. Our opponents can't cast spells during our turn. Ancient Adamantoise prevents all damage that would be dealt to anything else by having that damage be dealt to itself. And that includes damage to us until it's dead. And of course, the Sapling Nursery, we're able to crack it to give all of our tree folk and forests indestructible until end of turn. Those are our protection spells. We have a few recursion spells, ways to get our creatures back, and we've seen them all. Kulfanor's Urn, we can get back our creatures with toughness 4 or greater once they've died and gone in the urn, and if we have 3 or more of them, the urn will crack open and we'll get them back. Foul Renewal lets us put something back in our hand and kill something in the process, hopefully. Will of the Abzan lets us put one of our creatures back on the battlefield and hopefully force all of our opponents to sacrifice their thing with the biggest power, plus lose 3 life. Reach of Branches makes us a 2/5 Treefolk Shaman, but then whenever we have a forest of ours hit the battlefield, we can put this back in our hand to do it again. Smile at Death at the start of our upkeep lets us bring back 2 creatures in our graveyard that have power 2 or less. And Kulfanor lets us bring back a creature with lesser toughness than another creature we have that dies when that creature dies, including Kulfanor themselves. Our last section of spells in this deck is our token section, when we've seen them all. So Tend the Sprigs is likely to be just a rampant growth for us. It's a little bit more costly, but if we play it well, and we're able to, we're going to get a 3/4 Treefolk creature token out of it. We can get a lot of those 3/4 green Treefolk creature tokens with reach as well from Sapling Nursery. Arasta gives us a 1/2 spider creature token with reach every time our opponents cast instants or sorceries. And Shadrax, if we wish, we can make Inklings with them, the 2/1 flyers that are white and black. So those are our spells. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basics. Obviously, we're using Lorwyn Eclipsed basics. Beautiful. So we're running mostly green cards in this deck. We've got plenty of white and black as well. I'm a little low on swamps, but we have lots of dual lands to give us our black, and so we're doing fine on it. You could equalize these if you wanted, or you could actually go down to 1 or 0 swamps, and it would probably be fine. I like to run plenty of basics for reasons you will see soon, but also because we have several spells in our deck that go searching for a basic. So we want to be able to get whatever we need, whatever color we may need, so we need to have those basics in our deck to do so. I'm running 2 bicycle lands, Festering Thicket and Scattered Groves. The way these work is these are dual typed lands. This is a forest and a plains, so it innately taps for green or white, and it comes in tapped, but we can also cycle it for 2 generic mana, meaning while it's in our hand, we can pay 2 and discard it to draw a card. We would probably want to do this later in the game when we don't need any extra lands, but we can't do this while it's already on the battlefield, obviously, because you can't discard from the battlefield. What's nice about this is something we could find with Nature's Lore, because we can find a forest with it, but unfortunately Nature's Lore puts the land we find into play untapped, and this comes in tapped, so it would come in tapped. But if we find this with Farseek, we can find a plains with it, and that just puts something into play tapped anyway, so yeah, it's not a disadvantage. So our bicycle lands are great for us to find with Farseek and other effects like that. If we wanted, however, we could upgrade these to shock lands, like Temple Garden and the Golgari one, which are Also dual typed and could come in untapped, but we can't cycle them. So I like the utility of being able to cycle the bicycle lands later on. We're running 3 check lands. This is the way they work. Check lands are not typed duals, but they are dual lands. This Isolated Chapel will tap for white or black, and it will enter tapped unless we control the plains or a swamp. That doesn't mean basic plains or swamps. So if we have this Festering Thicket, it's a swamp. So Isolated Chapel would come in untapped if we have the Thicket in play. What's nice about that is we have 15 basics, 2 bicycle lands, and as you'll soon see, 2 tango lands. So we have a total of 19 typed lands to make our check lands come in untapped. Pretty good. We've got 5 fixing lands. We're of course running Command Tower. It's an untapped land that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, just like Arcane Signet. So it's an untapped tri-land, so yeah, we're gonna run that. We have Exotic Orchard. This is to Felwar Stone as the Command Tower is to Arcane Signet. It's an untapped land that taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. This is very good because we have a 3 mana or 3 color deck, so it's likely we're going to see at least 1 or 2 of those colors in our opponent's land base. And if an opponent themselves has an Exotic Orchard, then it will see our other lands. So if we have all 3 colors, their Exotic Orchard produces those 3 colors. So our Exotic Orchard can produce all 3 of those colors since it sees that other Exotic Orchard on that other playmat. Nice little cascade there. We are running Crozen Verge. Crozen Verge is our Myriad Landscape. It's a land that comes in tapped and taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sacrifice it to go find a forest and plains, put them on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. It doesn't say basic, although we can find basics, but we could find our bicycle lands this way, or our tango lands. Any of our dual typed lands, as long as they have the type forest and the type plains, 1 for forest, 1 for plains, of course. And so that lets us, hopefully we find our bicycle lands with this since they're going to come in tapped anyway, and it gives us access to more flexibility from the Crozen Verge. Now, even though this comes in tapped, the lands we're finding come in tapped, and we have to pay and tap and sack this to do it. It's very slow, but it is 1 land drop becoming 2 lands in play, so it is ramped for us. Again, it's just not very quick. So there are other cards you could run instead of this if you want to, or just run more basics. Blighted Woodland is a good one as well. It doesn't come in tapped, and taps for colorless, but you have to pay 4 tap and sack it, and you can find 2 basics. So a little bit of a trade-off, this ability to find non-basics, forest on plains with Crozen Verge, but a little slower in one way because it comes in tapped, and faster in another because it doesn't cost 4 in tap and sack like Blighted Woodland. Just an option for you. Path of Ancestry is next. It is a command tower that enters tapped because it has the same text as Command Tower. However, when you use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. Our commander is a Treefolk Druid. We have 12 other cards in our deck that are either Treefolk, Druids, or both. So any of those spells, if we cast them using mana from Path of Ancestry, will give us a scry 1. But it also means Doran himself. If we cast our commander, he of course shares creature types with himself, so we get to scry off of that too. Very nice. Finally, we have Temple of the False God in this section. This is an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, like Sol Ring. This is a soul land. We just can't activate it unless we control 4 other lands, so 5 or more, including itself. I know not everyone likes this card, but I think this is very strong in a deck like this one especially that can get a lot of high mana cost cards. And so if you have an opening hand that has, I don't know, a swamp and a Temple of the False God, probably worth mulliganing, since we're not going to be able to use this temple for mana early on. But you don't even have to wait till the mid or late game for this to be good. If you ramp well enough, you can still get this out and tapping for mana earlier than turn 5, and that's still pretty great. Next up, we have our 3 Pain lands. You could run basics instead of these, but being able to have access to dual lands that come in untapped is very valuable. These come in untapped and tap for colorless. We can also tap them for 1 or another color, brush land for green or white, but they do a damage to us if we tap them for colored mana. The way these normally play out is sometimes we're going to tap them for colored mana, and when we do, it means we're fixing our mana exactly for what we need, so it's worth 1 point of damage. Most of the rest of the time, we just tap other things for colored mana and tap the Pain land for colorless, so it's costing us nothing and just adding to our mana So yeah, I think pain lands are very strong for us. They are a little more expensive than basics, of course. Not quite as expensive as pathways, which I think are wonderful and a great side grade here. But we could also go to shock lands for this, of course, if we wanted to, since they only deal us damage optionally and only once. And since we're talking about upgrades, I should mention the check lands. We could upgrade these to slow lands if we wanted. Slow lands are great, like instead of Sun Petal Grove, we could do Overgrown Farmland. They might be a little bit more consistent, but we have enough typed lands in our deck that I think that the increase in monetary cost for slow lands over check, I think it completely justifies running the check lands, and it'll be fine. Sometimes you play a tapped duel, and that's okay. For example, these scry lands, like Temple of Malady. This is a tapped land that comes in, and when it does, we scry one. We get a free scry just for playing it, and it taps for one of two colors. So this is a guaranteed scry as opposed to the dependent one we get from Path of Ancestry, but it's not a repeated one like Path of Ancestry is, so pretty good either way. We've got all three color combinations for us for these temples. If you wanted to upgrade these to the Surveil lands, you certainly could. They are dual typed, just like the shock lands are, and they surveil for us, which is a pretty good option as well. I think it's not particularly better than scry in this deck, although you never know. But yeah, they're also much more expensive. I mentioned the Tango lands. Right now, all we have is Canopy Vista and Vernal Fen, but we are going to be getting more colors of these soon, and hopefully the black and white one will come out with Strixhaven, the Strixhaven Commander decks. We'll see. So the Tango lands are typed duels, much like the Bicycle lands, but they don't come in tapped unless we fail this. They come in tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. So if we have 2 of our 15 basics in play, these will come in untapped. So we could fetch Canopy Vista or Vernal Fen with Nature's Lore, since they're both forests, and have them come in untapped, assuming we have 2 basics when they come in. So pretty sweet to be able to Nature's Lore for a black or a white source untapped. Yeah. And again, with these, the same way, you could just upgrade to a shock land if you want to. Sandstep Citadel is a tri-land. This is a tap land that taps for all 3 of our colors. It's worse than Path of Ancestry, which is a worse version of Command Tower, and it's still worth running. It just fixes all of our colors. Totally worth doing. If you wanted to upgrade this, Indatha Triome is different in 2 ways. It also enters tapped, it makes all these colors, but it makes those colors because it has all 3 basic types. It's a plains, a swamp, and a forest. So we could fetch it with any of our non-basic fetches, including Crozen Verge. It additionally, Indatha Triome also has cycling for 3 generic mana, so we can even do more with it. But again, much more expensive than this 15-cent Sandstep Citadel. Last, we have our section of utility lands. We're running Access Tunnel. Access Tunnel is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and tap it, and target creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn. Now, it does not say target creature we control. We can use this politically if we want to, the way you might with Rogue's Passage, but this costs less to activate than Rogue's Passage, and it's really good in our deck, because we can make our creature with power 3 or less unblockable, and then attack with them, and their power can go up higher, and they're still unblockable. Because all that matters as to whether or not they can't be blocked is if they had power 3 or less when we activated this. This ability doesn't like fall off if their power gets too high after it's resolved. So yeah, Access Tunnel is very strong for us. I like to run Demolition Field in most of my decks, simply because even though land destruction is not something most of the kinds of pods that my decks go in want to see, you have to have an answer for someone with a problematic land. Like if they have a Rogue's Passage in their Voltron deck, or they have a Glacial Chasm, and we're trying to do damage to them. Anything that would empower someone else's game plan so that they might win before us, or stop us from winning, is fair game, especially if it's only 1 card in our 100-card deck to address it. So Demolition Field does that for us. It's an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land that our opponent controls, and then they get to go find a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. So neither they nor we are down a land, as long as we, of course, still have basics in our libraries, and we've gotten rid of the thing that was stopping us or helping them too much. So yeah, it's just an answer, and it's not a bad one. Forbidding Watchtower is next. This is one of the reasons why we have so few. We could have put one more basic planes in the deck. Forbidding Watchtower is a tap land that taps for white, but we can also pay 1 and a white, and it will become a 1/5 soldier creature until end of turn that's still a land. So we can still tap it for mana if we need to, but we can also block with it or attack with it, and since it's a 1/5 with Doran in play, it's going to attack and block as a 5/9. That's pretty great on a land. Finally, we're running Vault of the Archangel. I think this is just really fun in this deck. It's an untapped land that taps for colorless, but we can also pay 2, a white and a black, and tap it, so that's 5 mana, essentially, to give all of our creatures Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. Lifelink is not a theme in our deck, but we could sure use that life, especially if our opponents are trying to beat us down. Death Touch, very good in our deck, because we have a lot of creatures that have 0 power until they block, and then become very big. So I talked before about how Death Touch can be a sort of virtual evasion. Sometimes, not usually to win the game, obviously, but sometimes players will just choose to take the damage. They've got 40 life. So Death Touch, giving our creatures Death Touch means we're not going to get blocked anyway, so we're going to be able to push more damage. Or it means that it's guaranteed that their blockers are going to die, or their attackers are going to die. Having Vault of the Archangel in play, and enough mana to activate it, of course, is a great deterrent from players attacking us as well. If they know that when they attack, our creatures are not just going to get bigger, they're going to get Death Touch and Lifelink. So it's going to punish them, cost them their creatures, and reward us with our Lifelink, even if we don't lose our creatures, or even if we do lose our creatures. So yeah, Vault of the Archangel is just sort of a weird include in this deck, but I think it makes good sense. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Lorwyn Eclipsed Commander decks every Thursday through mid-March when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set drops. So let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific Lorwyn Commander or deck style. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe. Remember to hit that bell so you can be notified when I post my videos. And remember most of all that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.